I'm 35, and I used to believe that if I stayed useful enough, I would stay loved. Not admired, not respected, just not abandoned. When I met Marin, I was 30 and she was 27. She was sharp, organized, and magnetic in a way that made people lean in. I was calmer, slower to speak, the kind of person who fixes problems quietly and assumes that's what partnership is. In the beginning, she said I made her feel safe. I didn't realize she meant manageable. We dated for 2 years before I proposed. The ring cost more than I was comfortable spending, but Marin insisted it mattered. She sent me screenshots of designs, prices, even the exact size. When I hesitated, she laughed and said, "It's not like you're buying it for someone else." After she said yes, the compliments shifted. She stopped calling me kind and started calling me reliable. At first, that sounded adult. Over time, it started to feel like a label you stick on a storage box. We moved into a bigger apartment. We adopted a dog. Then we had our son. The first months after the birth were hard, like they are for everyone. We slept in broken pieces. We argued about tiny things because our brains were running on fumes. I did what I always do when things feel unstable. I worked harder. I handled the night feeds most weekends. I washed bottles, folded laundry, packed the daycare bag, booked the pediatric appointments when Marin said she couldn't deal with it. Whenever I tried to talk about how tired I was, she'd stare at me like I was accusing her of a crime. Then she'd say the same sentence, almost word for word. "You're playing the victim again." At first, I blamed hormones and stress, anything except the possibility that this was simply who she became when she knew I wouldn't leave. By the time our son was almost 2, the way Marin spoke to me at home would have shocked the woman I proposed to. She micromanaged everything. If I buckled the car seat and the strap sat slightly crooked, she'd sigh dramatically and redo it in front of me. If I sliced fruit the wrong way, she'd scrape it into the bin and cut new pieces while our son watched. If I put a shirt in the wash that wasn't meant for that cycle, she'd call me irresponsible. The worst part wasn't the criticism, it was the tone. Like I was an employee she regretted hiring. Sometimes it happened in front of other people. That was what made it feel unreal. At a friend's birthday dinner, our son spilled water on the table. I reached for napkins, smiling, trying to keep it light. Maureen leaned close and said, loud enough for the people beside us to hear, "Don't, you'll just smear it." Then she took the napkins from my hand and wiped the table herself with a tight, performative smile. Later, in the taxi home, I told her it hurt. She stared out the window and said, "I was saving you from embarrassing yourself." When I insisted it was embarrassing to be corrected like a child, she sighed and said, "You always make everything about your feelings." I started keeping my thoughts to myself. I stopped asking for comfort. I focused on logistics, meals, laundry, bedtime, because logistics didn't argue back. But the more I withdrew, the more she complained that I wasn't present. One evening, I came home late from a shift at the hospital. The apartment was unusually messy, not normal toddler mess. It looked staged, like someone had scattered things to create a mood. Backpacks half open on the floor, laundry dumped out of baskets, dirty mugs lined up on the counter like evidence. I started cleaning automatically. That's my reflex. Fix the environment, reduce friction, keep the peace. I picked up piles, loaded the dishwasher, wiped the counter. Marin watched me, expression unreadable. Then she said, "Don't bother." I didn't understand. I kept wiping. She raised her voice. I said, "Don't bother." I froze with a sponge in my hand. "What's going on?" She crossed her arms. "I left it like this on purpose. To see if you'd notice," she said, "to see if you actually care about this house." And you didn't. Her eyes narrowed. You walked right past it. I stared at her. I'd been cleaning for 10 minutes. She was looking at me like I'd failed an exam. I tried to keep my voice calm. I'm cleaning it now. That doesn't count, she snapped. If I have to ask, it doesn't count. The word test wasn't spoken, but it hung in the air. I felt something inside me shift because suddenly the extra clutter I'd noticed lately made sense. The little gotcha moments, the questions that didn't feel like questions. A week later, we had our third session with a couples therapist. Marin had agreed only after months of refusing, and she told people she was being generous by trying. The therapist was kind and careful. When it was my turn, I said, I feel like I'm always trying to earn basic kindness. Marin rolled her eyes. Then she told the therapist calmly that the real issue was that I was refusing to give her what she needed. What do you need? The therapist asked. Marin said, another baby. I said, I love our son. I would consider another child, but not as a way to fix this. Not when we can barely talk without you insulting me. The therapist asked Marin if she could see how an ultimatum might increase pressure. Marin nodded as if she agreed. Then, the moment we left the office, she went silent. That evening, she sat across from me at the kitchen table like she was negotiating a contract. Two options, she said. One, we try for another baby now, and then we keep doing therapy. Two, we stay miserable until one of us finally leaves. I stared at her. You're saying you'll only work on the relationship if you get pregnant. She shrugged. That's how I'll know you're committed. The next day, she brought money into it. If you're serious, put the apartment in my name, she said. If we divorce, you can walk away. I reminded her I'd paid the down payment with savings from before we met. She smirked. Here we go, she said. Victim. Over the next days, she pressured me constantly. Then she added a new threat. Her company had offices abroad, and she said she could transfer. If you won't commit here, I'll start over somewhere else, she said. I told her I wasn't making life changing decisions while she treated me like an obstacle. She stared at me cold. So, you don't care about my future? No, I said carefully. I don't feel safe building a future with someone who punishes me for disagreeing. That's when she packed a bag, not for herself, for our son. She moved quickly, efficiently, like she'd rehearsed it. She strapped him into his stroller and rolled toward the door. What are you doing? I asked. I'm going to my sister's, she said, for a few days, so you can think about what you're throwing away. I stepped forward. Don't take him. She looked at me as if I'd said something disgusting. He's my child, she said, and if you don't commit, I'm not staying here to be disrespected. The apartment went silent. I could still hear the echo of the stroller wheels in the stairwell. That night, I sat in the nursery and stared at the toys on the shelf. I realized something that made my stomach turn. She wasn't leaving because she was scared. She was leaving because she knew it would hurt, because she believed my love could be measured by my compliance. I called her sister once. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. Her sister sounded tired. She didn't sound surprised. She's upset, she said. She feels like you don't prioritize her. I tried to explain the ultimatum, the apartment, the demands. There was a long pause, and then her sister said, Marin can be intense when she wants something, as if intensity was a weather pattern we all had to accept. After that call, I searched online in the middle of the night, not how to fix my marriage, not how to communicate better. I searched for words like coercion and control. I didn't want to label her as a villain. I just needed a language that wasn't victim. And the more I read, the more I recognized the pattern of moving goalposts and manufactured guilt. The next morning, she sent a message, a list of demands. If I wanted her to come home, I needed to. Agree to start trying for a second baby within 3 months. Sign an agreement about the apartment. Apologize for making her look bad in therapy. I read the list twice. I waited for my brain to interpret it as a misunderstanding. It didn't. I replied once. I want our family, but I will not negotiate love under threat. 2 days later, Marin came back alone. She walked in as if nothing happened. Then she said very casually, "So, have you decided?" I looked at her and felt a surprising clarity, not anger, clarity. "I've decided we need boundaries," I said. "I'm not bringing another child into a relationship that runs on fear." Her face changed. "You're unbelievable," she said. "You would destroy this family because you can't handle a little pressure." "A little pressure?" I repeated. "You used our son as leverage." She pointed at me. "There you go again," she hissed. "Victim." And that was the moment it clicked for me. She wasn't misunderstanding me. She was choosing a story where she was always the one owed. In that story, my exhaustion was defiance. My boundaries were cruelty. My refusal to surrender was betrayal. I said the sentence I had been afraid to say out loud. "I don't think you love me. I think you love what I do for you." For a second, she looked almost stunned. Then she recovered. She laughed, sharp and bright. "Fine," she said. "If you want to leave, you can leave. But you're not taking my ring." I stared at her. The ring, the symbol she'd used to measure commitment like a receipt. "It's in the drawer," I said quietly. "I'm not fighting over metal." I don't know exactly how this ends yet. We are still sharing routines for our son, still walking around each other like we're navigating thin ice. But something has changed in me. I no longer confuse peace with love. I no longer confuse being needed with being valued. If we stay together, it will be because both of us choose to rebuild, not because I surrendered, not because I passed the next test. And if we separate, I will do it with a painful kind of relief, because I refuse to teach my son that love is something you earn by shrinking yourself. This concludes today's story. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed it, consider subscribing to support our work.